Welcome to The Shield Within. The issues discussed on the Shield Within podcast do not reflect the opinions of any specific agency. They are the views of the host and the guest. Any persons discussed may be fictional for comedic purposes only. This podcast is rated explicit and listener discretion is advised. Listening to The Shield Within may trigger repress or suppress memories or experiences. Please contact a mental health professional at your earliest convenience. It's time for the chaos to cease.
Time to open yourself to peace.
From the hours you've put in.
To the next shift you begin.
From the endless pursuit of release.
That finds the worst unleashed.
Transform the ugly into a win.
Get to know your shield within.
So welcome to the Shield Within.
Welcome, Mark.
So I'm your host, Marc the Cop. We have Dr. David, FD Donnie.
Hello, guys.
And Bill, I'm going to butcher your last name. I am so sorry. Is it Mazur?
Mazur.
Mazur. See,
yes, sir.
I should have asked that before we hit this. So we got Bill Mazur and Joe Collins with us. And you're both with Acadia Healthcare, correct?
That's correct.
And you're both former chiefs?
I was a former chief of police, and Bill was the deputy chief.
Okay. Bill was a deputy chief. See, I was just a lowly sergeant, so.
Nothing lowly there.
Just a stripe, right? Yeah, of course, I got my captain buddy here next to me. But let's do a little business here real quick, and then we'll jump right in. So if you're on Facebook, and we know you are because our demographics say how old our group is, go to Facebook /Shield Within, or you can go to our website, www.theshieldwithin.com. If you are in need, and some of you are, please reach out and hit that coaching button. You can talk to Dr. David himself, or you can go to lessonslearnedcoaching.com. And one other thing, if you have just some spare change laying around, you can help support the Shield Within by going to our Patreon page, which is Patreon /Shield Within. Dr. David?
All right.
It's all yours, buddy.
Welcome, Joe and Bill, to the Shield Within.
Thank you.
It's a really exciting for us that you're here. And listening to your podcast you did a few weeks ago with another gentleman, James Gearing, we all listened to that episode, and I think it would be an easy thing for us to invite you back right now to talk about your law enforcement experiences and treatment. Trauma treatment, I think, is an incredibly weighty, detailed kind of thing to wade into. We'd love to get more about Acadia. And maybe we'll touch many of those things this evening. But mostly, I really am interested in how Jake Clark from Save a Warrior pointed us in your direction on the topic of leadership. And our program has not every episode, but an awful lot of them. We have talked much about first responder culture, whether it's fire, EMS, police, and we've talked about what that effect of the agency, the department, what that effect has on the individual first responder and the traumatic experiences that they go through. And for us, I think a lot of it gets down to the issue of leadership. Who's in your department? Who's leading your department? What's that person's, to quote you, Joe, from this afternoon, from listening to the episode, what's their belief system? And how does that fit? So I'm sitting with you two gentlemen, and these two gentlemen here at the table, all four of you, I'm going to guess here, none of you were hired as officers, right?
You mean as rank?
I mean, you just started as a regular first responder. You didn't start out as an officer in any capacity. True?
That starting the career, no, that was a frontline, boots on the ground, working the night shift.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So I'm thinking, at some point, each of the four of you decided, I want to become an officer. I want to be in a position of leadership, is how I think of it. So I'm wondering, from each of the four of you, what got you to that point inside yourself where you wanted to become a leader?
Distinguished guest first.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so I think when you're saying officer, you're referring supervisory rank, is how I'm interpreting that. So, yeah, I mean, I think from the era that we came up, you didn't set your bar so high. I know I didn't.
Okay.
When I got into the job, really all I wanted to be was a reliable cop that people trusted and that could do the job.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to be.
Yep.
As a young man, 21-year-old coming into the profession, and by the way, I'm a second generation, so I had good role models. Mm-hmm. My father was on the job for 40 years. My brother was on the job, cousins, friends, loved ones. So, I had this thing where I identified with the good guys and girls, so to speak, right? So I wanted to fulfill that notion of being a helper in society.
Yeah.
It was never to be a supervisor. It's certainly not to rise to the rank of deputy chief. And I can tell you, even as I went through the ranks, it was never about just having an extra star or a bar or a stripe on your sleeve. For me, and I know for Joe, he'll tell you himself, it was, how can I impact this place? How can I impact the people around me for the better?
Yeah.
Now, certainly, of course, it's always great to make rank. There's a financial incentive where you can create a better life for your family and yourself.
Right.
So there's that. But from my perspective, it was never like, oh, I want to be chief of police or I want to be deputy chief of police. It was, I want to be somebody that people can rely upon. Now, I will say this. Once I got to the first rank, like the frontline supervision sergeant, saw that, hey, this is a great job. By the way, I always say that sergeant was the greatest rank ever because you still can get out there and get after it and be a cop, and you can still supervise people and do good for your men and women on the front line. But if I'm speaking honest, I definitely said, I could make more impact at the next rank. I could help sergeants out.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I could enable them to help the patrol officers out. And again, being perfectly honest, I also felt like I was motivated by a few people with lackluster leadership ability who actually had a bar or two bars. And I said, there's no way in hell that person should be wearing that bar. They don't have command and control. They're not suited for this, and they could do more harm. If I'm speaking honest, that was part of the motivation. So that's kind of like where I come from. Just wanting to be a good cop, wanting to be dependable, wanting to help people, and also do high speed things, right? Catch bad people. You have to have the desire to want to do that.
Right.
And then, sort of getting promoted, that's how I kind of, in my head, those were things that I equally considered. Like, there's no way this person should be supervising some of these folks. And then the converse of that was there were some awesome people who wore those bars, and they should have been even higher, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Very, very good answer, Bill. Joe.
Right. And I'm just going to echo a lot of what Bill said, is that I think that the sergeant position, that was my favorite position as well. I was actually, so we had what was called corporal before that. And what was interesting about that is that was not a position that you applied for within my agency. It was assigned to you by the chief and the leadership team.
Okay.
So I was actually, they had a lieutenant's process within our agency, and we had some people that moved into the lieutenant's position that opened up the corporal's position.
Okay.
And I received that promotion assignment without asking for it. But I was, both of us were in SWAT. I was on the tactical team, the honor guard team. I took on, and Bill, we've had these conversations as much as I could at that time, because the busier you were, the more you had your hands involved in things back in the 80s, early 90s. That's how you got recognized. But it was fun, being involved in all of those things and being in the high-speed teams, being on night shift. And then the corporal led to sergeant, and I was on the night shift sergeant. And to not have administration around, I had a lieutenant, that was there. And, if things got too dicey, then you could hand that off to the lieutenant, right? And it's like, and you got to go on the calls that you wanted to go on. and be involved with the, what stuff that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
But you can hand off the stuff that you didn't want to necessarily have to get too deep into.
Yeah.
When they were there, there was occasions when the lieutenant then wasn't there, and you were the shift supervisor as the sergeant. Mm-hmm. But I did that for a period of time, and then we lived quite a ways away from my wife's parents at that time, and we had young kids, mm-hmm. and she really wanted to get closer to home.
Okay.
And so for us, I was looking at how do I move closer to where my wife wants to live, and continue with my career. And like Bill was saying too, is that I actually left a lack of leadership within my organization, and became the chief of a different police department. So I was actually the police chief in 2 different communities for 21 years.
Wow.
The first 6 was in one agency that the reason was to get closer to home. Mm-hmm. And kind of the funny part about that is that when we got there, we realized that we were still doing all the traveling to see our family. So after that period of time, and to be honest with you, I left that second agency then because I had an administrator that I wanted to get away from because he was not a good person. Mm-hmm. And that was my boss. And so at that point, my wife was like, you know what, we can go anywhere. We're the ones that actually do the traveling. So the first place that I applied and interviewed for, I became the police chief then just outside of Green Bay. Mm-hmm. And I spent my last 15 years of my career there as a police chief. Wow. And really it afforded me of the ability to grow within myself, but then also to help everyone around me, I believe, become stronger.
Yeah.
And how we're sitting in this chair talking with you and Jake Clark, the whole Jake Clark story, I'm going to tie that back together.
Right.
I was contracting and doing some work with Acadia before I came on full time with them. Mm-hmm. And one of those things was that we went out and we have national sales meetings with our team. Mm-hmm. And it happened to be in California, and they were running a Sable Warrior in Malibu at the time. And they kind of jokingly refer to it as the meeting in the driveway. So I was there. We had the conversation. They invited me then to come and be what they call a witness of the program. It's basically to be an observer of what's going through.
Yeah.
So about 7 years ago, I was able to do that. And I was there, 13 people, 12 others and myself, and they kept kind of describing me as the witness to the program. And on the first break, I'm like, what is this? What is a witness? I'm not sure what this is. And they're like, well, there are no witnesses. You're in the program.
Oh.
So I was full, and it was amazing because, it really taught me a lot about myself and helped me to be less judgmental about people that are actually asking for help in this position.
Yeah.
And I had a great conversation with one of our new team members today about judgment. And how within the first responder community, we have to judge people in situations very quickly because it's life or death in those situations. But what we don't do well is to train people to recognize situations that they're in that don't require judgment. And we don't do really good at that. We do an amazing job at training them to be judgmental, and not in a negative way, judgmental to save your life.
Right.
Because when you're making a traffic stop, when you're knocking on the door, the first time that you see someone, you have to judge whether or not they're a danger to you or not.
That's right.
And the normal human being, we kind of talk about this, is that they get to live in the world of probability.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? It's that probably nothing's going to happen today.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to go to Walmart, go to the grocery store, go to the movie theater, and probably nothing's going to happen. So what does that allow them to do? It allows them to live where their parasympathetic nervous system is activated. What does that mean? They can rest, they can relax, they can take it all in, and they can grow and they can become better from it and take all these different things in. But what we've done to the first responder community, when we send them through the academy, is that we flip the switch. Mm-hmm. And we flip the switch where they live in the world of possibility.
Yes.
And what does that mean? If you're constantly living in the world of possibility, is that when you go to Walmart today, there might be an active shooter situation. Mm-hmm. When you go to the theater, it might be. You go to the basketball game at the high school, there might be an active shooter situation. Mm-hmm. So if you're living in possibility, you have to have a plan. And if you have a plan, that means you're activated. And when you're activated, you're dumping cortisol and adrenaline into your system. The gas pedal is on, and you have to be there as a threat assessment. You know, it's kind of like when we talk about going into the restaurant, right? What we first do is we figure out where all the exits are. And then we figure out which table is the best to have the best view of the front door, because typically that's where the threats are going to come, right? And we're going to have our back to the wall where the exits are, so that if somebody comes in, I have to be in this position. It's like, well, you know what? Sometimes it's hard to enjoy your steak when you're at right? It's like,
no, you're spot on with that, bro.
And if you're in a safe place, it's like, you know what? I want to enjoy my damn steak.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be worrying about who's coming in the door next and where my knife is, right?
Yeah.
But what we don't do is we don't explain that to our first responders, that we've done that to you. And now what we've done is we've given you a different way to look at the world. And that's healthy when it needs to be, but it's unhealthy if you got your gas pedal slammed to the floor all the time and you're dumping all of these chemicals into your body that, you know what, cortisol and adrenaline, it'll kill you. It'll kill you.
Yeah.
And how do you regulate this stuff out of your system? And we don't do a good job of being able to teach people how to do that.
Yeah.
So as leaders, you know, we often say that you can have the best program policy in place. You can tout the fact that you're wellness driven and all of this. So what my pushback to any leader is, how did you treat the last person? I don't care if you've got the best policy on the planet.
Yeah, I keyed into that on the other show, Joe, and I'm out mowing my yard, and my neighbors are thinking I'm nuts. I'm going, yeah, because I'm agreeing with you on that. And I'm sorry, I couldn't shut my mouth off there quick enough, but that is so true. How did you treat the last person that came through? How, you know, and what is going to be the perception for the next person that's going to, you know, I have a problem. Am I going to go to this guy?
Exactly.
Sorry, Joe. Please continue.
No, 100%. And
hey, Joe,
and if they don't trust you,
before you go on, I want to real quick. Joe very articulately just described how we normalize all that possibility and probability stuff, and we disguise it with two words, and we normalize it by saying, "This is good." You know why? It's situational awareness. That's what we tell ourselves.
That buzzword.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we tell ourselves, and it's a good thing. We're not saying situational awareness is bad. We're saying it's a good thing. But when you live in that all the time,
right?
Yep.
Joe just explained, you know, perfectly what that looks like. And people who aren't familiar with this, civilians, if they listen to the five of us talk, they would go, "What?
Yeah, excuse me? What do you mean?"
Very good. Very good. Gentlemen, what drew you to becoming an officer?
We'll go to the fireside first.
Sure. Cool.
Fireside wise, I mean, I'd go with the same thing that Bill and Joe just said. You know, it's like there you had some great leaders that you wanted to fill their shoes, knowing that they weren't going to be there that much longer. Then on the same hand, you had some terrible leaders that you wanted to make sure that you weren't going to be that person, that you were going to, you know, take it to the next level, train up your people as, you know, they needed to be trained. And then also, just like I said, try to be a good mentor and leader for them. For me, you know, it came down to a test process, and then I was asked to be in it. So that's what I started with, you know, becoming a lieutenant. So I, you know, took that test. There was a couple of guys in the department that I said if they were in, I didn't want to be in it because they deserved it more than I did.
Oh, okay.
And I felt that because I had the utmost respect for those couple of guys, and they decided not to put their name in the hat. So that's why I went ahead and pulled the trigger on that one and took the test. And then from there became a lieutenant, and then the captain's position. I got promoted, you know, up to the captain's rank. And then again, it was all about the leadership thing for me, on trying to be there for my people for the way that people weren't there for me.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at for my side of it.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Did each step that you took, did you have to take a test for each step?
The captain's position, we did not this time.
Oh.
Yes.
But each step up to that point?
You normally did. And then when they went to the assistant chief's position, it became a test.
Okay. Hard?
Yeah, that wasn't too bad. They told you what we're going to, you know, you need to study your level 1, level 2. You need to study your officer's handbook. a bunch of different things.
Okay.
So, I mean, it didn't make it too difficult for us, but difficult enough. Let's go that route.
Mark?
When you asked about that earlier about leadership, I had I started out as a part-timer, and I had been exposed to some really good people and then some really bad people. Now, not bad as in evil, but just horrible managers, not leaders. They're just managers, and they weren't good managing there either. So that was kind of my thinking, if I ever get a shot at this, I'm not going to do it like that guy. I kind of want to make my own road. Yeah. So then it reminded me of the time I worked at a small village in Miami County that shares the border with Miami and Darke County. It's called Bradford, Ohio. And the chief had just resigned and took another job. And the mayor came in, called me one night, and he said, "Hey, Mark, why don't you stop by my house? I want to talk to you." "Sure, Mayor, what's up?" And he offered me the chief's job. And I was like, "Thank you, but I'm way too young in this industry to have done that." And I often reflect back to what if I would have said yes to that job, how things would have changed. So I got my job at my former agency. I was there 5 years, maybe 6 years before, and then got into the process. And the first time I was in the sergeant's process, I wasn't successful. Okay. And the chief said, "Well, Mark, you need to study a little harder, so you get those high scores, and it's easier to promote you." So then the second time around, I embraced the process more. I studied harder, and ended up getting stripes after that.
Okay. So
I was a sergeant for 9 years, and I heard you guys mention earlier we're all big fans of the same guy, Bill and Joe, of John Maxwell. So
absolutely, John's a great author. Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think the biggest takeaway that I had from when I went through the Save a Warrior program was, and we see this in the military and all first responder communities, that people get into this field because they want to help other people. There's nobody that doesn't want to do that. Right. But what we don't do is in the same time period as we don't take care of ourselves. Yeah. And that self-care is so much more difficult. And simple does not necessarily equate to easy, because some of the stuff that you can actually do to help yourself is very simple. Right. But you actually have to do it. Yeah. And I learned going through there is that I was putting all my effort into helping other people, and I was doing very little for self-care. Yeah. And John's my favorite quote that John has in any of his books was, "The best gift that you can give to anyone that you truly care about is a better you." And you can't do that unless you're using tools and resources to make yourself better every single day. Exactly. And and Bill and I have these conversations all the time, and it's Kevin Gilmartin stuff too, right? Don't become a Yusta. And it was funny because he was telling me about the conversation he just had, and I had just had the similar conversation about working out, about doing something physical. Yeah. And the response usually comes back. It's like, "Well, I used to work out pretty regularly, and you don't do that now." And so, "How do you feel when you work out?" "I feel really good." So what you're telling us is that you're waiting to feel better before you do something that's going to make you feel better. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, isn't that an interesting concept?
Yeah. It's easy to work ourselves into a corner. It's harder to work ourselves out of it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, for all four of you have mentioned this, so I'd like to dig into it a little bit. All of you had experiences before you became a leader with seeing people around you that were not good leaders. So I'm wondering, from all four of you, how could you tell? I mean, what was it about a crappy leader that said, "Man, that dude is a crappy leader"? What was the pattern of behavior? What was the relationship like? What did you see, feel with that lousy leader? What was that like?
Bill, you're up.
Sure. I could talk about this all day. This could be 10 podcasts. Well, look, I think it's multifaceted leadership, and no one's perfect at it. It's always a process. You step, you fall, you stumble. But the consistent qualities that I've seen in people in leadership positions were they listen to people, and they followed through on the thing. that people told them, right? I think listening is probably one of the most overlooked qualities embedded in good leadership.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because if you can't receive feedback and not think it's criticism or a threat to your ego, right?
Yeah.
You have to be. Now, I'm not saying that you judge by a panel and everything, because actually, good leaders know when to turn that off. Right? In critical situations, you need to make decisions and live with them and own them. Right? That's another quality. People who will make decisions, live with them, own them, and then if it didn't work out, of course, figure out how to not do that again. But own it. Right? So I always felt like the people who were good leaders were good listeners. They took feedback well. They didn't see it as criticism, and then they would include others, lower rank, equal rank, whoever it is, and take some of those ideas and say, hey, this would work, or hey, what do you guys think about this? That's one thing that really stands out for the good leaders in my life. There's many other facets. I mean, walking the walk, talking the talk, all that. But I think listening, active listening, right? The kind of leader that asks you a question and waits for your response, allows you to speak, they're not sitting there just formulating the response in their head to come back at you with what you just said, right? Yes. They're sitting there listening, taking it in, digesting, active listening. That's a quality that stands out for me, active listening in leadership.
Now, that would imply to me that you saw leaders around you that didn't listen.
That's correct.
And so...
and there were some that did a great job of listening. I think, what else it shows too? So listening, there's offshoots to this. I'm not saying like, hey, everybody should listen to me or listen to us. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is they don't have a large enough ego. They have enough humility to know that they don't know everything.
Exactly.
So humility is an offshoot of active listening, is it not?
Yes.
Right? So courteousness, respect. You see how all these things shoot off of good listening?
Right. Exactly.
And if you're a good listener, you pretty much probably own those other qualities too, in my experience.
Totally with you. How about the rest of you? Have you seen, what was it about that that you noticed about lousy leaders? How could you tell?
Well, and I'm going to build, because I learn something every day, and I've just had epiphany when Bill was talking about this, is that they have to be really good time managers. And I need to expand on that, is that everything has a specific time and a window of opportunity. And like he was talking about, during a crisis, it's not the time to have a democratic debate about a decision, right? And we live and work in a world that most people understand that. It's like, you know what? If it's hitting the fan, it's time to make a decision. We're going to move forward. We're going to do the best we can with the information that we have at the time, and we're going to move forward with that. But time management is a little bit different. Is that you have to understand when that particular situation isn't clock driven. It needs to be compass driven. And the thing is that what is your values? What is your goals? And what is the best outcome for this? Because if you have time, then the clock doesn't matter anymore. And you have to manage that and understand that. It's like, you know what? This is something that the best way for us to move forward is for us to take our time, look at our values in the system and how we want to represent as organizations and individuals, and build on that to make the best outcome possible. And, when we teach this, we do a lot of resiliency teaching across the country and different things as well, is that when we teach leadership, when we talk about leadership, it deals with a lot of what Bill is talking. Transparency. Number one skill is that they have to believe that you're being honest with them on who you are and what you want out of it, right? And then it really comes down to authenticity. Are you really who you're saying is you're going to be? Are you going to back your people? Are you going to back your decision? Are you going to be there if I make a mistake and you ask me to do it? Are you going to own it? And then it's vulnerability. Is that showing vulnerability when you can in front of your folks to say, listen, you know what? I'll own this. I made a mistake. You know what? This particular call was something that messed me up. you know what, seeing the situations with kids and all of these different things that we're dealing with,
Right.
I need to have resources and tools to get this out of my system too. And this is how I do it. And you have to make it so that that's normal conversations.
Yeah.
And I experienced that. I was teaching in the academy one time, and we had a Marine that had transitioned from being a Marine to going to the academy. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this, and he said, let me tell you what happened in my experience. Very young Marines, you know, we're talking 18, 19-year-olds mm-hmm. that were out there doing the business. Mm-hmm. And one of their partners, one of their team members fell in battle. And they're all standing around looking at each other, trying to figure out what they're supposed to feel, because they hadn't trained them how to feel. Mm. And as soon as it was safe to do so, the sergeant knelt down and he started weeping as the sergeant of that. And he gave everyone else the permission to feel the grief and loss and sorrow of losing a friend.
Beautiful.
And when the time is right, we've got to demonstrate that that's the way that you get this stuff out of your system.
Yeah, yeah. It's leadership by example in a very real moment when everybody in that context needs exactly that to happen. Mm-hmm. Somebody in a position.
They're all watching.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They're all watching. And they all take something from that interaction that they apply in their own lives later on. That's like lifetime stuff to me. That's a decision that leader made that affected everybody around him for a long time. I think
100%. And by showing that, you just made everybody else in your group that much stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And you strengthen your position as a leader when you do that. Your folks look at you and respect you more when they see the true self right there. Mm-hmm. Mark, Donnie, lousy leaders.
Go ahead, Donnie. We'll just stay in the batting order.
I mean, I think a little bit difference for my side of it with the fire side is, we had 6 guys on a truck compared to you guys, 1, 2, with the cruisers and stuff like that. And, with the lousy leader side of it, when you'd have other firefighters come to you and ask you the question, hey, I don't feel safe doing this, what your chief or assistant chief or whoever told you to do. Ooh. And, they would come to me and ask that question, like say, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this. Do you think we should do this? And that's when it started slowly progressing, like, okay, that's not what we're going to do from here on out, Okay.
I distinctly remember a training we were at.
Green light? Yeah, we had a hazmat training, and they were asking, how do you identify
the command post?
The command post. Yeah. And they asked my assistant chief at the time, what distinguishes that? What makes that a command post? And he just sat there and he never really could come up with it. So he asked the lady that was running it, she said, excuse me, sir, do you mind if I ask your lieutenant who's your scribe right now on this? And he said, yeah, that'd be fine. And so I was like, well, it's, the green light and here's where it is. And his exact answer was, when did we put that on the truck? I'm like, well,
clearly Donnie had all the answers during that exercise, and I was embarrassed for the guy. I felt bad. I was there representing the police department because we had our department, the sheriff's department, OSP. Yep. I think everyone involved in this area. I was just like, oh my God, I was ready to crawl underneath the table because this guy was just bombing. He just didn't study anything. I think his answer was, I'm at it. And they're like, well, what designates you that you're in the command post? Well, I got my vest on. Says commander.
Yeah, because I was writing things down as she would ask the questions. I would go ahead and write it on the board so he could look up and know what to say next.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
It was painful.
Like, simple training,
Yeah, just simple stuff.
Yeah.
That is painful.
So yeah, that's kind of where. Exactly. I right there 100% with you. That's the first thing when you asked that question. I looked at him and started laughing. I'm like, all right, we're going to a green light. I know this.
Yeah, we're going to go to the green light thing.
Let's put the vest on a mannequin.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're like. Okay, so you got 100 firefighters standing there. What makes this truck the command post? But anyway, for me, just being exposed to leaders that couldn't make a decision. Or managers that couldn't make a decision, and when you're around those people, they're making all that. They're just lost, and it's like, what the hell are you doing here, bro? And Joe said earlier was that in the time of an emergency isn't the time to open up a debate. And as soon as you said that, I went, how many times have I seen people go, so, well, what do you think? What do you think? And then there's this discussion rolling. It's like, we don't have time for this. You got to start making decisions. Yeah. Right or wrong, make the decision.
Right.
Hopefully good, educated decisions at that.
Right.
But I always strived to educate myself. And then I never thought I was the greatest person in the world. So I always asked for peer review. So the one thing that I always did, I was the only supervisor at my agency that did this, was that, every March was eval time. I'd evaluate them, but before I did their evaluations, I passed them out my evaluations. And I said, I want you, because my boss never saw me, but he had to write an evaluation on me, right? I mean, I got there 2 hours after he left, and left 2 hours before he showed up. So I literally never seen him but once a month at a command staff meeting.
Wow.
So I had my officers, one was doesn't meet expectations, meets expectations, or exceeds. And so I said, if you give me a 1, I want a detailed answer. It's not like F you, Sarge. Right. You pissed me off last week.
Right.
I said, I'm not going to tolerate that. If I pissed you off and that really bothers you, please put that on there. I'm humble enough, and I can't improve unless I get an accurate view from your position.
Exactly.
So that was one thing that I felt helped me become a better manager or leader for them.
Right.
And the best comment I ever had was from one of my officers, and the poor bastard was stuck with me for like 7 years, from the time he got there, and he evolved as an officer. And I said, hey man, I really wish I had this version of you, 4 years ago. And he said, well, consequently, Sarge, I wish I had this version of you 4 years ago. And that was one of the best compliments I ever got.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I had at my home, I had a need to have 3 trees removed, and I got some estimates, and I chose a provider, a tree removal service, and they showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got out on the porch and watched them, and I saw the leader of the crew. And I watched him for the first 20 minutes, and he set everybody up, and everybody got to work within minutes. And I watched him all day long, and I thought, and I found myself smiling my ass off the entire day. It was just I love watching effective leadership. It's a beautiful thing to watch somebody be good at it. And at the end of the day, I was like, no, wait a minute, man. What am I paying attention to? What behavior is catching my eye? And I came up with 5 things that just stood out to me in the way that he functioned as a leader of that group. Number 1, he was really quiet. He didn't raise his voice. It wasn't about him. The job was about them. It was all first person plural, not first person singular. And then secondly, he was incredibly clear. I stood at a distance and listened to him tell people what their assignments were. I want you 2 guys over here doing this, all that. It was very clear, very quiet. Everybody knew exactly what he wanted them to do. Third, he worked his ass off. They all did. They were there for 8.5 hours. And he didn't just give directions and walk away and go get a cup of coffee. He jumped on a chainsaw, jumped on his lift, and went up the tree and started working, just like all the rest of them were doing. And fourth, as you both mentioned, he was reliable. You could tell people went to him, could count on him. 2 of the crew had to leave in the afternoon to go to medical appointments. It was Friday afternoon, a beautiful day. They didn't have to come back. He said, look, we'll come back here on Monday morning and finish it up. It'll take just a little bit of time. Don't worry about it. Go to your medical appointment. It's cool. They both came back at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon so they could finish the job and not have to come back on Monday morning. It was damn, that's cool. And number 5, my wife and I talked about this at length last night, he also made sure everybody on the team had all the resources that they needed. All the tools, all the direction, all the who you're going to be working with and what you're going to be working on. All those tools and resources were very specifically laid out for everybody there. And we talked at length about that. And I listened to Joe and Bill talk about this on the podcast this afternoon. How often did you feel as officers, as first responders, often did you feel like your leaders were giving you the resources that you needed? Anybody can start.
Go ahead, Bill.
Sure, I'm happy to. Yeah, so the things that you were, and it's a great illustration. It doesn't matter, what sort of profession you're in.
Mm-hmm.
What I heard you say was, I don't know if I got all of them, but communication, work ethic, pride in their work, right? They wanted to do a good job.
Yeah.
And so those were the things that I heard. And really, aren't they just transferable to any discipline?
Right. That's how.
Right. And the folks who are good leaders, they'll provide those resources and do everything they can, maybe even to the detriment of themselves, in terms of being with people above the chain of command to get you the resources.
Yeah.
Why? Because they've done the job and they know what it's like to be on the ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
So, resources are huge, but all those other things, really, they are true foundational components to building a good leader and getting, it's being a follower too. At once that guy was probably a really good follower, really good worker. And so he knows the things that matter to get the job done right, efficiently, effectively, right? Pride in your work. So now he's now the boss, or he's the foreman.
Right.
And he knows, well, I know what it takes to do this job.
Yes.
So therefore, I know what I would have wanted as a guy or a girl up on that bucket truck or whatever, cutting that limb down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. You're sensitive to the realities of it. It's concrete. It's real. It's not words on a piece of paper. It's not a word in a training or a book that you needed to read. It was real. It was in the moment. It makes
it's one of the pitfalls of what Joe and I refer to as positional leadership.
Okay.
We have something that comes before leadership, because there are two kinds. That there is leadership that can occur at any level in an organization, and we have statistics that we could talk about later when when a peer becomes involved in this, and how meaningful it can be when there's a peer. But positional leadership can disconnect you from the front line, insulate you, and you can forget what resources are paramount to getting the job done right. I mean, for those guys, it could be something as simple as a good helmet that fits right with good ear protection and solid gloves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Those tree guys.
Absolutely.
So that may be lost in somebody who's several spots removed from that position.
Yeah.
It didn't get lost on that guy who was supervising them, I'm sure. Right. So I think positional leadership, when you move away from the front line, and it's a pitfall. I mean, it can happen to the best of us, but that's why it's important to get down and speak to people. Get down. When I say get down to the front line, and start to get out there and talk to folks. And again, what's the best way to find out what matters? Feedback, listening.
Yes.
So I'll go back to that.
And it's a great thing to come back to. Listening's the key to everything to me. For leadership, for sure, but for being any position as a first responder or a therapist or a plumber, whatever. It's really helpful to get the job done and the outcome to be positive. It requires listening. Yeah. Joe?
No, and I agree. And there's a trap when you move up in a different ranks and your chair gets bigger.
Yeah.
You may have the assumption that you know what the job still is back there, and you're potentially 10, 15, 20 years removed. And right now, when I went back and sat in the patrol car that the officers were using, when I was getting ready to leave, it's like, holy crap, I don't know how to work half of the stuff in here. So for me to say that, I need to pick out which computers that you need, or which radars that you need, or what this or that, it's like, oh no, I have no idea. Because we expect our officers and our staff not to be distracted and we put them in a world of distraction. But you know what? Don't look at that when you're driving. But you got to know exactly what's going on to be able to get to where you're going. And how do you do? You're looking at the dang equipment, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I guess just not getting in that trap, because it's an easy trap, like Bill said, to fall into when you're removed from that. And again, when you're acquiring equipment, it is not necessarily always time sensitive. Mm-hmm. So again, put the clock away. Involve the people, listen to the people that are going to be using that equipment, mm-hmm. and making sure that they're getting what they absolutely need for the job. And, we have a lot of discussions with people that have the need to go somewhere to get additional resources in the mental health or behavioral health world.
Okay.
And the common theme is that they know what they need. They don't. They often know what they want. They don't necessarily know what they need, and it's a control thing.
Yes.
And when you get promoted to sergeant, you believe you've been promoted because you know how to do the job. And however, you've got to be humble enough to say, listen, you're not doing their job anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the leader. Great, he got involved in stuff, but he may not know what's necessary now to do one of the other jobs.
Right.
And by, like you said, the first thing you said was being quiet.
Yeah.
The only way you can listen is by being quiet.
Exactly. Yeah.
And anytime that your lips are moving, your ears aren't working.
Yeah. Donnie, Mark, any reaction?
I'd say for our side, again, back to the fire side, we were more committee driven. So, we had, peers, and you had your officers in the meetings and stuff of what we were going to, look for. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was the officer was to keep the meeting on track, but was also, like we've been mentioning before, it's to listen to your guys. Mm-hmm. What do they want? What do we need to do to make this better? And that was the biggest thing for our side of it. Like I said, it was strictly committee, and just coming up with what we needed. And then if we wanted to try things, that would be another thing. Let's go ahead and we'll try this, mm-hmm. and let's see if this is something that, yes, we should implement, or no, we shouldn't implement it. And kind of then take it up the ranks the rest of the way, mm-hmm. and see where we went from there. So that's kind of it on my side of it. So
encouraging, eliciting ideas from your staff, mm-hmm. is part of your job as a leader.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Your butt's to sit up in the front right seat.
Yeah.
The other 5 around you, they make the decisions, of mm-hmm. what do they want, what do they want, where do they want it.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
I just tell you how to use it if I need to.
Mark?
I was always a firm believer in Maxwell's. I loved John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership and the law of the inner circle. I learned a long time ago that I'm not a subject matter expert in everything, mm-hmm. and to rely upon the people that was on my shift that were experts, mm-hmm. and to help them expand and grow, mm-hmm. and sometimes we did the committee mm-hmm. approach to things, mm-hmm. But keeping those people involved and they have more ownership of the process. I feel that once and like what Joe said, as long as my mouth's running, I'm not listening. Yeah. So it took a while to learn that, mm-hmm. but mm-hmm. I think that the team succeeded better mm-hmm. when I was quiet and allowed them to move forward and take mm-hmm. more ownership in the decision making process.
More we than me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because Mark, you talked about the inner circle that he talks about, and mm-hmm. and one of the great leadership advices that I got from someone is that he said that when you get to the position where you actually get to select those that are around you, mm-hmm. make sure that you surround yourself with people that are not like you.
Exactly.
And because I don't know, I've been in so many different organizations and seen where the chief surrounds themselves with all these yes people, mm-hmm. and it's like groupthink is one of the most dangerous things that we can have in our career, yes. in our culture.
I like to call it the hive.
People are going to get hurt.
Yes, I like to call it the hive mentality. I'm sorry I spoke over you, Joe.
May your days and nights find you strong and safe. May you take your place as your family's face. As you do the shit that we won't do. As you embrace the risk you must go through. May you grow in strength and heal and find your heart, your soul, and your mind. You look at your life and grin. You have a home, the shield within.